Good evening and welcome to our sixth edition of Webster Speaks, Dialogues on Race, Equity, and Inclusion. I'm your moderator, Earl McCoy Jr., Regional Recruitment Coordinator here at Webster University. Tonight's theme is Coming of Age, the Black Lives Matter Era, a conversation with Suggs Scholars. Just a quick reminder, the Q&A and chat functions will be disabled during tonight's conversation. However, we encourage your participation. You can send your questions as always using Twitter, using the hashtag Webster Speaks, or send me an email at EARLMCCOY24@webster.edu. We'll get to as many questions as we can during our live conversation. Furthermore, because of our large panel and their story to tell tonight, tonight's conversation will be extended. And now, here's our host, Webster University's Chief Diversity Officer, Vincent C. Puella.
Thanks, Earl. Good evening and welcome to Webster Speaks. Thanks for joining us for our sixth edition. This is fantastic. We're super excited. I'd also like to thank those of you who have supported our diversity and equity and inclusion efforts by making donations. Greatly appreciated. Tonight is all about young people, the generation that will shape the future for all of us. We have with us a panel of Suggs Scholars. Super excited about them. They are our academically talented Webster undergrads of color. They are recipients of a scholarship named after the publisher of the St. Louis American newspaper, Dr. Donald M. Suggs, who is actually our first guest of Webster Speaks back in July. They are the leaders of the future, yet they are facing an old problem that still won't go away: overt acts of racism, and a leadership that seems unwilling to make significant change that address the core roots of inequity in this country. Just in the past week, we've learned that there was in fact a police camera footage of the shooting of Breonna Taylor after authorities denied that there was any video footage of that incident, allowing them to spin what happened that night into their own narrative. We learned that police in Rochester, New York, suffocated a young man who was known to have a mental illness and was exhibiting erratic, however, non-life-threatening behavior, and then they covered it up for months. We just learned that President Donald Trump, in a recorded interview with famed journalist Bob Woodward, said that Woodward was drinking the Kool-Aid when he named several examples of white privilege. And just in our own backyard here in Webster Groves, where our main campus is located, neighbors were left with threatening notes telling them to remove their Black Lives Matter yard signs, and white supremacist graffiti was spray painted on sidewalks in front of 5 area churches. And this is in 2020, more than 50 years after the civil rights legislation was passed by Congress, and more than a century after the end of the Civil War. So let's talk to these young people. I would like to introduce Takoya Bell. Tell us about yourself, your age, your hometown, your major.
Okay, I'm Takoya Bell. I am 19 years old. I am from St. Louis, and right now my major is political science.
Welcome, and thanks for joining us. We have a pair of brothers tonight, so let's start with Jalen McBride.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jalen McBride, and I'm 20 years old, and my major is Management Information Systems, and I'm from St. Louis.
Welcome, and thanks, Jalen. Your brother, Javon?
Hi, I am Javon McBride. I am 21 years old. I am a senior, graduating this year, studying human resource management and leadership.
Welcome, and thank you. Last but certainly not least, Miss Brene Jackson.
Hey, I'm Brene. I'm 19 years old, a sophomore here. My majors are secondary English education and Spanish, and I'm from the north side of St. Louis.
Welcome. Unfortunately, one of our scholars cannot join us, and so we're going to to wave and say hello to Henny, who's unfortunately not able to join us as he has a work scheduling conflict. So what is it like growing up during a time when there is unprecedented activism to bring racial equity to all levels of society, alongside widespread denial that there's even a problem? We want to hear your thoughts on this. Who wants to go first?
I would like to start off.
Please.
To quote the late, great Chadwick Boseman, he said, "To be young, gifted, and Black, we all know what it's like to be told that there is no future. To be young, gifted, and Black." And I think that really summarizes what we're trying to do here. We're trying to give young Black people the opportunity to let themselves be who we are. Because a lot of times we're in class, we have to fit a certain way, we're trying to get the grades, we're trying to be active on campus, but finally you give us a chance to just be who we are, talk about these issues. And I applaud that, because I think as a university, we need to have these voices heard. We need to have these type of stories being told. So I'm ready for this. I think that the Black Lives Matter movement needs to be told. It needs to be spread out. Anyway, we are the next generation. We are the world changers. You all say that to us every single day. So now it's finally time to put that in practice.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wakanda forever.
Anybody else want to join in following Javon?
Well, I'll say that it's sort of exhausting since people do fail to recognize that these racial problems still exist within society as a whole, but specifically in America. I feel like it's something that every generation has struggled with, and it's sad that we're still fighting the battle still to this day in 2020 after so many, I guess, achievements. But I don't know. It's exhausting. It's really exhausting.
And is this that exhaustion that you speak of, Brene, is that exhaustion that you've experienced for a long time or just more recently?
I would say it's more recent, because growing up, I never had to deal with white people, like saying it plainly. But when I got to high school, I did have to like adjust more to the racism and, being recognized as the other, because I never had to deal with that until I started going to PWIs and started like recognizing that, oh, this is the real world and people don't really tolerate Blackness at all. So
let's just do a point of clarification. PWI, I know what that is, and I know you know what that is, but not everyone listening to us may know. What's PWI?
PWI is a predominantly white institution.
Okay. And as a Black student, if I'm hearing you correctly, as a Black student who has predominantly been in Black educational institutions until fairly recently, you said high school, right? What has that exhaustion looked like, or what has led to that exhaustion for you in terms of being in those PWIs?
Well, for one, it's like everyone already has a preconception of the person you're supposed to be or how you're supposed to act. And it's like, if you don't fit their stereotype of you, it's like, what type of Black person are you? It's sort of like mysteriousness on behalf of us for the white people. Also, like having to be the voice for every Black person, since there's not many that exist in those spaces, is really exhausting, because I don't have all the answers for whatever question they feel like they want to raise. So it's me having to be the spokesperson and try to be whatever they want me to be. I guess that's the exhausting part.
Thank you. I'm seeing Takoya over there nodding her head. You want to jump in on this?
Okay. It is really exhausting because I feel like we're circling a lot of the same issues that kind of have been rehashed over and over again these past couple of decades or so. And I have a lot of experience being one of the only people of color in almost entirely like a white classroom, like a white setting, and it's kind of alienating almost. So that's pretty much it. It was like whatever Renee was saying, like, yeah, I felt that really hard.
Thank you. Anybody else want to? Okay, go ahead, Jalen.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I know I can really relate to just being the only person of color in a majority of predominantly white setting. I remember just me and my brother and my mother just going somewhere, and we were the only black family there, and that was the first time where I have like had the thought of I can't find anybody that looks like me, because that's how we feel comfort just finding just similarities. And as I grew up, I was that just kept happening, and then I just gotten more used to it, or so I thought. And coming into Webster my freshman year, we had a documentary about Webster Groves, and it was just more so in the earlier times. And we, they, it was just a lot of, it was a predominantly white city, and they would refer to people of color as Negroes, right? And I just like felt so hurt, and I have never felt that before in my life. And when, it just really made me feel like I was the other, and I never really want to feel that ever again. And I was reading a play recently for my acting one class, and it was the setting was in the earlier times in the Bronx, and uh it was about just like a school and a church, and it was predominantly white, and it was around 1964 with the Civil Rights Act. And what how do I put this? And a child came in, and he was African American, and they called him a Negro as well. And I, in my reaction, I had to write my reaction. I told them like I actually had to stop reading because I just do not like how African Americans or colored people are seen as the other to uh, different races, and I just it's not a good experience for me at all. So.
How often does that happen for you? Would you say that experience of feeling that way?
Um, every once a blue moon.
Okay, thank you. Divine, you're shaking your head there. You want to jump in?
All I really have to say is that being considered othered is something that the majority never has to really have to live in that world. Because being a minority, being a black person, even being a black male, you have to really think about where you are in a situation. How does that being othered, what does that look like for that particular group? If you're being othered, does that mean that I'm othered because you're looking at me because of my skin color? Are you looking at me, am I othered because of my intellect? What are you really looking at? So being considered othered, I've learned that I've had to operate differently for different situations. And although the majority never has to really think about that, when you talk to other people of color, it seems like that's a type of familiarity across the board. And we built a community around that. We laughed about that, we joke about that, but that shouldn't have to happen. I should be my authentic self, whether if I am at school, whether I'm with my friends, whether I'm with somebody else. I should be me. I shouldn't have to like try to fit this mold that you want me to be as this black person, as this black male. And that's why I've learned that if you're you, just you genuinely as you are as a person, the right people will find you. And I think that is something I think our generation is trying to break that mold. Say, just be authentically you, and the right people will come.
Javon, I want to appreciate that. I want to kind of take that conversation a little bit further with you and others here. But building off of this concept that earlier that you started off with being young, gifted, and black, right? It's a great song, right? It's a classic song, Young, Gifted, and Black. You all are Suggs Scholars, right? You all represent some of the smartest students on the Webster University campus. And you're telling me that you, despite the fact that you are academically so strong and smart, that you still are enduring and still having to put up with these situations? Do you think that you are also held at a higher standard? And how does all of that then play out for you? You know, so you're smart, you're gifted, you're Black, right? You're a Suggs Scholar. And is there a level of high standards that you are held to, right? But then it sounds as if still you turn out to be Black, and then people fall back and resort back to stereotypes.
That's exactly what happens. And it's sad because all my life I was told that, okay, I'm short, right? So I was told by my family, you can't play ball. You ain't gonna make it that way. You know, you ain't gonna be like your cousins. You can't play basketball. You can't play football. You're gonna have to make some education, make some education work for you. So all my life I was told that. And then I get this scholarship to prove that all of my hard work in elementary, middle school, and high school worked for me. So now I get to this next spot, and now I know, okay, this is who I am. This is where I'm supposed to be at. And I'm still fighting. I'm still having to prove myself. It gets tiring sometimes because you realize that some people are just going to see you as your color. And although that is the harsh reality of it, it's although I want it to change, I know I still got to fight for the next generation. I still got to make sure that who I am and what I stand for is all the way across the board. That the people who supported me along the way, I make those people proud.
Excellent. Thank you. Anybody want to add to that? I do have another question, but does anybody want to follow up on that at all?
Oh, I do.
Please.
So I do agree that I do agree that, you know, being young, gifted, Black, you're held to a different standard. But I'm not sure I understand why. Because it's almost as if like they expect us to behave differently than everybody else, or have different viewpoints. It's like, oh, how could you feel like that? You're smart or whatever. Like it's almost as if like they don't like we're being alienated from that group as well. Because I know when I was growing up, I got called white girl and stuff for being smart. That's another thing within the Black community I don't understand. So it's like when I get around the white people, it's still like you're just a Black girl. So it's like I don't really get the mix up there. But we're definitely held to a different standard, and it's almost like it's unrealistic, because at the end of the day, like, that's our community. We have similarities, of course. It starts with the race and the skin color. So it's like, I don't know. It's really a weird conception.
You know, it's interesting. You talk almost in having to live in between two worlds, right? It's almost as if from what I've heard you just say, maybe with your Black peers, they think because you're smart that you are white.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're within the white peers at the predominantly white institution, you're not white, you're clearly Black.
Yes.
And how do you fit in that struggle? So my guess is that also is a part of that exhaustion.
Definitely a part of the exhaustion. Like, it's a battle, because it's like, I don't care like who people, like what they want me to be. I'm always going to be myself, but it's like that I'm always getting boxed in to like, oh, you act like this, or you act like that, or you don't act like this, or you don't act like that. It's like there's stereotypes, and not everyone has stereotypical behavior or ways of carrying themselves or whatever. Like, we're just who we are, and not really, it can't be attested to always a race or a gender or anything like that. So.
Great. Jalen, do you have a thought on this?
Yeah, just going back to my just Black peers. I remember I was in class, and I was talking to my friend, and then somebody came up next to me. Was like, "Why do you talk like a teacher?" And I was like, "Wait, what does that even mean?" And I just realized that I guess my education and my um, just how my parents taught me how to speak, how to just my personal enculturation process was different from theirs. Um, so when I go out into the world and just work, go to school, just do what I have to do, I do see a disparity between me and other people because sometimes they assume what I have to do, just and I just try and prove that I am not who you assume that I am, because I work hard and I'm willing to show you that because in this day and age, people talk way too much, actions speak way louder than words. And I, I definitely act. So,
That's amazing. So, right, so we've heard the exhaustion being in part having to balance between the two worlds, right? We've also now heard the exhaustion of, and you don't know who I am. You don't see me for who I am also. And so how do I even get to, who am I? How do I even get to show up to be myself? Takoya, do you have a thought to share?
I just want to say that for me, it was always a little bit different from being expected to act a certain way because I don't necessarily look African American or how you would expect someone of an African American descent because I'm mixed right now. And I came up in like a community that was really, excuse me, like diverse. Like there was a lot of other African Americans who were gifted and smart and they were really athletic, but also there was like a really underlying layer of expectations from our white peers that we kind of held to a different standard, basically. It was frustrating, to say the least.
Takoya, I really like that you shared that with us in terms of your own background, right? And being biracial and having a mixed background and having a variety of exposures, right? Clearly somewhat different than what we've heard Brene describe as her background, right? And I think that so often our white colleagues, our white peers often think that that being Black is a monolith, right? That we are all the same, and that we all have the same experience. And you are speaking to something that, often challenges, and white folks at times, I think, get really challenged and mixed up about, wait a minute. And what's really interesting, I think, is that some of this speaks to the level of racism and the stereotypes that they actually may have. Because to question then your skin tone, or to hear Jalen, the way in which he speaks, right? It's kind of like that, oh, you're so articulate, right? Well, I know English. I should be articulate, right? But that then says something about what you then expect me and how you expect me to speak, right? Takoya, it's also a question then of like how you expect me to look, right? And what does it mean to look and to be Black? Really great conversations there. I'd like to remind our audience that they may tweet questions at hashtag Webster Speaks. Did I see you put your hand up, Javon?
Yeah, I was just going to say that Jalen and I, we were always taught education was key. And we were taught that no one can take away your education from you, no matter nobody. So to us to get this scholarship was us saying we can get this, It doesn't matter what the other people may say. This is us. This is what we fought for. So when I hear Jalen talk about those stories, it reminded me that what we're doing today in this panel is what our grandfathers and the fathers before them, this is what they were fighting for.
This is what we have as Black folks been fighting for a long time.
Yeah.
It was illegal at one point for us to be educated, right? Earlier today, I actually participated in a panel, and Ruby Bridges was one of the keynote speakers. And she talked about how she was the first to integrate the schools, right? And that was 1960, right? And so this is 2020, right? So we're not talking too long ago. We're talking in the lifespan of most people who are probably listening to us at home right now. Education for us is critically important. I too was taught the same. You cannot take away your degree, right? That degree hangs on my wall. These degrees right here hang on my wall. Nobody can take them, right? I can lose everything, but I have my education. I want to switch a little bit to the conversation to that of activism, right? And where we are right now in this Black Lives Matter movement. And we have certainly seen protests and activism taking place, and it's not just sporadic anymore, right? It's very sustained. And in part, I think it's, obviously it's because of the overt racism that's still going on, but it's also because cell phones and social media make it possible to expose these things worldwide and in real time. You all have grown up with technology, whereas someone my age hasn't, right? Do you ever reflect on that? And the fact that the role that technology has played in today's activism? Anybody ever just think about how everything we see now is so captured on these phones and are helping to really shape and change the narrative?
I'll talk about it.
Thank you, Renee.
So, with everything being like handheld, it makes it easier for everyone to hear our voices and what we have to say regarding situations. But it also it has room to be disastrous. As far as people showing like the murders of Black people on the internet, it's constantly in our faces. But for some people, it's new. They've never seen anything like that. They've never heard of anything like that. Like, I know for the most part, the first time that anyone has ever heard of a police killing ever was Trayvon Martin. And although that wasn't on like video recording, it's still like social media. I know like on Twitter, everyone was like, oh, like maybe he was a thug or something like that. It really, I would say that it's good and bad. It's bad because we constantly have our trauma thrown in our faces, but it's good because people can hear us and they can see what we're experiencing as a community. But yeah.
So I want to build on that, right? So again, another point of exhaustion, right, is this fact of being re-traumatized over and over. In one of our episodes, we had Dr. Jamaica Woody Cooper on, and she talked about the fact that Black folks also have to, the level of exhaustion that we deal with is in fact because of that trauma, right? So you're right. This is a great thing because it opens the eyes for folks who for a long time have denied what so many of us have known to be true, right? And for them, it's been a great, I shouldn't say great, but it's been a benefit or a byproduct of that technology. So they get to see it. But for us, it's trauma over and over and over, right? Trayvon Martin, as he was killed or killed by the man down in Florida. I can't remember his name right now, and I apologize. But killed by him, and you're right, we didn't see that, right? And therefore, then it opened up questions about what he was doing and whether it was true, right? And it was really only, as you think about it, George Floyd, in that we were all at home due to COVID, so we all saw it. And then you saw to the degree in which it was clear that he was defenseless, right? That the knee was actually George Zimmerman. Thank you. George Zimmerman was the killer of Trayvon Martin. And so, here we have this police with his knee in the, like, we see this. And that's a perfect example of that level of exhaustion, because we saw it over and over and over and over and over again. Not only did we see that over and over and over again, but then there's stories that happen over and over and over and over again, right? That for us, and truth be told, some of us have either our own experiences with the police or members in our family who've had run-ins with the police, right? Hopefully, and not to the degree of death, but nonetheless, the degree of fear about what those, you raising your hand. Go ahead, Javon.
I love how you brought up George Floyd, because we were in a pandemic and it was COVID-19, but at the same time, Black people were in the pandemic called racism. And I remember sitting here thinking with my brother and my father and mother, and I was like, we're battling two different things. On the one hand, you're battling this global pandemic, a disease called COVID-19, but then there's a silent killer, quote unquote, another one called racism.
Yeah.
Which one do you fight? Am I supposed to fight racism today and then COVID tomorrow? Am I supposed to put on a mask today and then protest for this Black Lives Matter movement? Which one am I supposed to do? And it gets so exhausting to where, like I said before, I'm young, gifted, and Black. What does that mean? Am I now supposed to put on a mask, go fight, and then come back inside and say, hold on, now we're in a pandemic, I can't do nothing? It's so exhausting because, like I said, where's the line? Where do I draw the line? And my grandfather, he was all into civil rights movement. He fought in Vietnam and everything. He was like, I'm tired. Now you're starting to see where I'm coming from. And now it's weird to see these two pandemics finally come together, finally meeting somewhere, finally understanding where we are as people. We're tired. And I think that's what I want people to understand. We're tired. That's it. We're exhausted and we're tired.
And tired because guess what? You have to fight both of them. You don't get to choose one or the other. They both are real for you today. Racism and COVID. You don't get to shelf racism and just deal with COVID today. You don't get to just shelf COVID and deal with race. They both just continuously exist for us. Again, another indication, another very clear point of the level of exhaustion, to the point that we're just sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? I appreciate that. Anybody have a response to that? Okay. Go ahead.
Just back on just technology, I just wanted to say that it really is a double-edged sword, just with the whole Mike Brown situation in Ferguson. Since that was documented like all around the internet, we had the whole world like trying to help us out, and since we've had so many instances of just gruesome police shootings just brought up to us, it's tiring in that way, because media shows us things that we do and don't want to see, and it's in like we have to have these tough conversations, and they may not be so common to us. So I think it is our responsibility to have these tough talks and then move forward, because if we're not growing together, then we're growing apart. So I just want to put that out.
That's a great point. And I think it's necessary that we are willing to have those conversations. But again, I think it's also just critically important for folks to recognize that that's at the expense nonetheless, right? I think it's great. I want to ask about Michael Brown and the killing there, right? So Michael Brown Jr., what did the killing of Michael Brown Jr. and the Ferguson mean to you when it happened? I'm assuming that you all remember it happening. And my guess is that you all were probably, likely in middle school or early high school. How did something so close to home shape your thinking?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I was a sophomore in high school, and I remember it was a Thursday when I went to Hazelwood Central, and we're in Florissant. So Ferguson is literally like the next town over. And I remember I was sitting down in class and they said, Friday, you're probably not going to go to school because it's getting rowdy outside, the protests and everything, and we want you to stay safe. So I remember coming home and I was talking to my dad, and I was like, Dad, I don't really understand what's going on. Because I was still young, I was still trying to understand. I remember my father having to sit down with Jalen and I just saying what's going on. And as a Black man, having a father in the home to explain that to you, really breaking that down, is a blessing in itself. So he was telling us, this is how you're supposed to be presented when you get pulled over. This is what you're supposed to happen when you are encountering with the police. And I was thinking, okay, I'm like 16, 15, I don't really understand everything, but just knowing that I had wisdom coming to me. And that's something, like I said, is a blessing. And I know that my white counterparts don't have to deal with that. That's not something that's passed down from generation to generation, how to deal with a police officer. So I was with my other friends, they're all Black, and we're like, hey, you understand what's going on with Black Lives Matter, with Mike Brown, everything. We're talking, just trying to figure out what's going on. And now, fast forward to today, I have a completely different perspective about it because I've learned, I've grown, I've been through education, I understand how it's working now. And just looking back on that, I see it's two completely different stories, but I know it all comes together.
That's good. And you're right. Again, right? Our white peers don't have to have that conversation. We've talked about that on past episodes of this. And it's one of those things that I think my mom had that same conversation with me when I was 16. And to hear that your dad is also having to have that conversation. And sadly, my fear is that you as a potential father may have to have that conversation with your child as well. Anyone else want to add to that?
When Mike Brown was killed, I was in the 8th grade and I was living in Dillwood, Missouri. So that's like the next county over, like literally up the street. And I remember just being so scared because I was like, wow, because the media portrayed the riots as like the worst thing ever. Like, oh my gosh, they're tearing up their whole city and they're hooligans, basically. So I was scared. It instilled fear in me off rip because I was like, okay, there's not many people upset that this man killed this child in the middle of the street and left his body there. There's not enough people that were understanding that the looting that was taking place, it was not as detrimental as they were making it seem, because I'm a person who is in defense of looting. Honestly, I don't think that it's harming any Black businesses or anything like that. So I'll just say that now.
I missed what you said, Brene.
I'm sorry. I said I'm a person that stands in defense of looting because I feel as if it doesn't harm Black communities directly. If anything, it's just taking money out of big businesses' pockets. So I really think that it just shook me as a child because I didn't really understand what was going on, but I did understand the rage that all of the protesters and the rioters were feeling when they were burning down Quick Trip or looting businesses and stuff like that. So it was scary. It was really scary.
So I want to the point about looting and your positionality around that. And so your thought on looting, can we talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to ask you to share more with me about what you were thinking on that.
So I believe that looting, like if looting is being done as a form of protest, I don't think that is bad because, like I said, it's a form of protest. Yes, there's violence, destruction of property, but I don't think it's not directly harming the Black communities. Like, yes, they're destroying things that are in their communities, but not even all the time are they doing that. Like, people will go and destroy something. I'm trying to think of a way to say this. Like, basically, it's not harming the Black community when they mess things up.
So that often is a counter argument that's made about the fact of looting, right? Is that it happens and occurs in the communities in which we live, right? And often communities in which we live that are often under-resourced, right? Food, grocery stores, right? And so it's normally a quick trip or a convenience mart or something like that versus a full-fledged grocer or grocery store. And so when we loot those places, then we no longer have access to them, right? While it may not be owned by us, right? We think about up in Ferguson on Florissant, there were some Black-owned businesses that were, in fact, right, impacted by that. And so there's always that counter argument to it. What I think I'm hearing you say, though, is that because of the rage, because of the conditions in which the racism or the police brutality and just being, as we said earlier, sick and tired of being sick and tired and fed up and exhausted, right? That may in fact then be the reason behind that. I'm not sure. I'm just trying to put some understanding to what you're saying there. Is that where you're going to know? Maybe not.
I mean, yes, it kind of was what I was saying, but I was saying, like, people view it as such a horrendous act. Like, oh, I have no idea why those people are destroying their community, but I don't view it as such. I just think it's more of like they're angry and they want to. I don't know. I look at it like as reparations too, because it's like people don't realize, like, when people loot, they don't just loot and just keep the stuff for themselves. Like, sometimes they give it away or they sell things. It's always more than just they're going in taking things. Because it always ends up back in the community. Like, I can attest that, like, it always ends up back in the community. It does not harm. If anything, the looting helps the Black community get us resources, you know?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anybody else? So I have one final question before we, I'm gonna turn over to Earl for a couple of questions from our audience. And again, to the audience, remember that you can tweet your questions to us at #Webster Speaks. How do you all feel about this counter statement of all lives matter or blue lives matter versus obviously Black Lives Matter? And what does Black Lives Matter mean to you? And what do you think about those counter statements that often are out there?
I'm going to say that when I say Black Lives Matter, I mean Black Lives Matter. I'm not giving you a counter argument. I'm telling you my life matters because you see Black people being killed by police. You're not seeing all these other races being killed by police. If I go up to the doctor and I say, "Hey, doctor, my knee hurts," he's not gonna go up to me and say, "Well, Javon, all your bones matter. You know, every bone in your body matters." Yeah, but I'm here talking about this particular bone in my body that hurts. That's why Black Lives Matter. I'm not trying to tell you that although the Black lives matter, that the other lives don't matter. I'm just letting you know we have a problem in my community and we need to get it solved. That's what Black Lives Matter means.
Takoya?
I just want to say that when people say all lives matter, it's kind of infuriating almost because they're dismissing the fact that in all lives, Black lives are supposed to be in there as well. If you're saying all lives matter, then you should be mad too. And I have kind of like a complicated relationship between Blue Lives Matter because I remember when the Mike Brown thing happened, I was going to a white church and one of the patriarchs at that white church was a cop, and I knew that guy. He was a good guy, but at the same time, he was also a part of the system that was inherently like flawed and corrupt. So, but to say that blue lives, you don't choose to be a cop, is what I'm saying. I mean, you do choose to be a cop, but you can't choose to be black. You were born black, but you can stay or not be a cop, is what I'm saying, basically.
Excellent. It is a complex, and it can be complex. Jalen or Brene, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, just to quote Randall Stevenson, I just wanted to say, I remember watching his speech, and he was just talking about how just racial tensions are dividing our American communities. You know, he was just saying, like, when people say, uh, Black Lives, no, he was saying, you know, we say God bless America, but nobody's saying about, like, what about all the other countries, you know? But it just really shows how people are, just trying to understand where we come from by saying that. I just feel like there's just ignorance in saying all lives matter, because they don't really know what it's like to, you know, be a person of color. And, you know, and I understand that they grow up in different communities and different cultures. And so they may not necessarily understand it right away, but I do feel like as if we're interacting with each other, it's better to understand where someone is coming from, because, you know, the more we understand each other, you know, just in, you know, just surviving, you know, if we understand each other more, the less likely we are to kill each other, you know? So I really do think that, you know, all lives matter is just ignorance, but it we can change it. It's just a matter of if we want to. So
Thank you. Renee, you could get the final chance at that question if you like.
So with the All Lives Matter thing, I don't think that people recognize that when we say Black Lives Matter, it's not saying, oh, only Black Lives Matter. It's saying that Black Lives Matter too, because people have failed to recognize that, because historically we've been abused, mistreated, just a lot of horrendous things have happened to the Black community. So it's like we're declaring that they matter because nobody else is declaring it. Nobody else is recognizing the importance of our lives. It's almost as if we're disposable. Like, so that's how I feel about All Lives Matter. And Blue Lives Matter, I don't have any words for that one. I really don't. It's just, I just think it's ignorance. That's the part where I feel it's ignorant. Because it's like you're saying that this group that has been actively abusing my people, and to counter what I'm saying, you're saying, okay, police lives matter. Like, for what? Like, they do. We're not saying that they don't, but it's like nobody ever said that they didn't. People have explicitly shown us that Black lives don't matter to them. So that's why we have to assert ourselves in the world. Like, hey, we're human beings and we deserve everything that you guys have as well. We deserve the same type of treatment, the same type of access to healthcare, the same type of education, the same type of everything, if we're supposed to be citizens of this country and just human beings in general, you know?
Thank you, Brene. You know, I want to come back. I want to offer to you, Brene, a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King, which is, "A riot is the language of the unheard." Right? And I think that goes back to your comment earlier about the looting and the rioting there. Earl, any questions out there?
Oh, yeah, the questions are coming in. So this is not a question, but this is a quote from a previous alumni, and it reads, "I'm so disappointed to hear this generation speak of the same issues. Feelings that I experienced in my years at Webster during the years of 1963 to 1967. I thought we had paid the price for you young people." And a question to that point is, how will you use your powers as college graduates to make life in America better for Black communities?
Go ahead.
Okay, so as I told you guys, I'm an education major. And the whole reason why I'm an education major is because when I was in the sixth grade, my sixth grade English teacher showed us this documentary, and it was just showing like Black boys just, I'm going to use air quotes with this, being Black boys. They were being suspended from school and drinking, smoking, et cetera, et cetera. So she asked us, she said, when you think of Black people, what do you think of? And the first thing that popped up in my head was something negative. I'm not even going to share it. And then she was like, okay, you guys see how you guys are coming up. The first thing you think of is something negative. It's because society painted Black people that way. So I want to just kind of reconstruct the image that we have of ourselves, because I feel like Black people are afraid of themselves and like the potential that we hold. So with my major and my career choice, I'm just going to try to touch as many lives as I can through education, because I feel as if that's like one of the most powerful things that one could possess, like knowledge, wisdom, information about the world, how to navigate the world. It's something that no one can take from you.
Excellent. Anybody else on that one, or you want to offer another question, Earl? Okay, Javon, and then Earl, another question.
I'm gonna say, because I am an HR major and I want to go into that field, the reason why I chose it specifically was because I'm the person who does all the hiring and firing. I'm the person who gets to recruit. I'm the person who you come and sit down in between your manager and yourself, and I try to make the difference. So the reason why I really chose this was because if I can choose a Black person in the Black community, give them a job, I'm able to make their lives easier. I'm able to give them a paycheck every week. That's bettering their lives so that they can go out and help their family out. They're able to make their community better. And that's the whole reason why I wanted to choose this major to begin with, because I knew the greater picture when I got out of college. So now that I'm getting towards that step, I'm getting ready to graduate, I know that my work is yet to be done.
Thank you. Earl?
Yes, we have another question here, but on the same point for the question, it says, all lives don't matter until Black lives matter. And this person wants to know, is there a group that meets on Webster University's campus on or off-site to be a resource for students of color, as a group where white students can support them as well? Meaning, is there a group for Blacks and whites to come in and have this conversation on Webster University's campus?
I am going to attempt to answer that if I don't see a response from our panelists. So I don't know that there is no formal group for such. There are obviously, when you're on a college campus, the hope is that will organically happen, right? We do have multiple opportunities on campus for groups to come together, for various identity groups to come together. There is no formal group for that purpose there. You have another question, Errol, from Twitter?
Yes. What can kids that are currently in high school do now to help themselves prepare for the transition to college?
What did you all do to get ready for college?
I know, for one thing, I did a lot of reading. I was the bookworm. I was taking AP Senior English. I was getting myself ready for that next step. One of the books I do remember reading was talking about how the transition through life is different for each person, and that each step is just a milestone in your greater story. So I remember reading that, and I remember thinking that as I transitioned into college, I knew I was going to be away from all the people who I grew up with, all the people who I was comfortable with, but I knew it was going to be a brave new world. And the book was actually, one of the books we actually read was Brave New World. And it was just said, all brave new world who have people in it. And it was just saying about how it's a big, beautiful world you haven't seen yet. So transition to college, what I did was a lot of reading, a lot of studying, and then I gave myself grace. I told myself that I can't put so much pressure on myself, because if I put too much pressure on myself, I'm going to pull myself down when I could have been building myself up. So one of the things I've actually learned in college was to give myself grace and to tell myself that it's okay to breathe and just take one day at a time. Because when you're a successful Black person at this age, you have a lot of pressure just to perform academically. And you want the A, you want to show people I'm more than just a Black person, like we talked about earlier. But sometimes you need to watch Netflix, take your shoes off, take a nap, just say, I did all I could for the day. And that's okay.
Self-care is critically important. And again, going back to Dr. Woody Cooper, she underscored that often throughout her time with us several weeks ago, the need for, and particularly for people of color, for Black folks, to really do two things: that grace piece that you spoke about, and that self-care, like just checking out, right? Give yourself grace in the fact that I can only do so much today. And I've done well at that, and I'm checking out to take care of myself. But giving yourself grace is critically important. I actually have a question here from someone who fortunately has my cell phone number, so they have texted this question. And it is, there are many self-identified, well-intended white folks at Webster. What do we need to do less of to better understand and support Webster students of color and the Black Lives Matter movement? They have also done hashtag brutal honesty is welcome.
Oh, you want to go, Jalen?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something quick. Me and my friends were talking about the topic of, just white people, just what they can do to help us out. And we were just thinking, like, it's fine to understand where we're coming from because that's the first step, but something that needs to happen for all of us to move forward is that they need to help their friends who don't get it understand it. And I understand that people are very set in their mindset, it's very difficult for people to change. So what I want for them to do personally is just leave them to at least consider what we're saying, because that moves a lot, because no one's going to change overnight. And we know that. We've been fighting this for who knows how long, but steps are, we have to move at least positively, so that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Renee, and then we'll see if Takoya has something, and Javon.
I'll say close your mouths and open your ears, because I feel as if when people of color are talking about their experiences, being people of color just in general, white people always feel the need to say what they feel about what we're saying. And it's not about what you think I'm saying or how you think I'm portraying this experience that I'm speaking about. It's about the literal words that are coming out of my mouth. Like the pain. I'm sure that most people speak with like a tone of like hurt in their voice when they're talking about being a person of color in this country, because we've experienced pain. But honestly, just listen and try to empathize. Don't be like constantly apologetic, because that's also draining. Just listen and let us feel heard, make us feel heard.
Thank you. Well, I'll come back to that. Thank you. Sequoia or Jalen?
I want to say that white people probably let Black people do the talking. I know that when Breonna Taylor had gotten killed, a lot of people were posting, it's been X number of days since Breonna Taylor has been killed, and they were just posting like a selfie on Twitter. It was a lot of performative wokeness almost, because they were so concerned about how they would be presenting to other people. Essentially, they were kind of talking the talk, but they weren't really walking the walk. They weren't really talking to their friends and their families who were still ingrained in their ways. They were talking over a lot of African American and people of color voices. I just feel like kind of taking a step back, letting African American people do the talking to spread information and stuff. And I'm not saying step back entirely, because white people can help. I don't want to say like add credibility to a movement, but it can be like, this isn't just a person of color
issue.
But this is affecting everybody.
What did you mean by performative wokeness?
Like, to use Twitter again, for example, people put like Black Lives Matter in the profile, or other acronyms of that sort, but then they would say like really like misinformed information. They were putting on like airs like, oh, I'm woke, I know about all the issues, I know what people are talking about nowadays, but they weren't really actually like putting their, what's the word for it? Like they weren't doing what they were saying they were gonna do.
Got it. Thank you. So it's this idea of just kind of quick, I do it just to kind of, it's trending, it's a part of what people are doing, but I don't really have to go and actually live out what it is that I'm actually saying.
Yeah, that. Sorry.
No, thank you. Jalen. Or was it Javon? I forgot. I'm so sorry. Who had not spoken?
I haven't, but I thought you were just trying to give Jalen some more time to talk.
I messed up. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Honestly, everybody covered the bases. I just want to say, just going back to that performative wokeness, I remember last semester, and I think 2 semesters ago too, people were just like on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, and saw Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. And when I would go to class and I would talk to people about this Black Lives Matter, they were, they didn't want to talk about it. And I was like, I thought you said Black Lives Matter. I thought you was for the movement. And they were like, oh, whatever. They try to play it off or whatever, but it kind of hurt because I thought I had an ally in them. And knowing that sometimes, like I said, it's for performance, it's just for the likes, for the comments, that hurts.
So, for the likes, one of the things that we are hearing feedback from folks who are tuning into Webster Speaks is that, and I should be more clear, from white people, is that they are finding this as an opportunity to learn, to listen, just as Brene has said, right? And many of you all have echoed, just listen, right? And we have heard that in emails from folks or in feedback that is the great thing about Webster Speaks. I've received another text from someone who has basically said the same thing, and they said that this panel experience has given them hope, which is a rare thing these days, to hear these beautiful voices and to listen and learn from their thoughts and feelings. This is both healing and educational. They want me to thank you for that. And that is what this is about for us, right? Having an opportunity to share our stories so that our allies and our friends who say that they are about doing this work with us can listen to us so that they themselves can be healed. Because racism hurts, and we've heard about that, right? We know about it, but it also hurts white folks as well. And there is the need for this healing to take place. There's this ownership and accountability for it, and then a commitment to really become anti-racist. And some of the best ways for that to happen is, in fact, to listen, and to listen to young voices. You all have been fantastic tonight, and I can't thank you enough. Earl, you have another question, and I have one more before we pull up Chancellor Strobel.
Yes, I do. Talking about Miss Jamaica Woody Cooper, we got a couple questions talking about the mental health and health of the Black community. So one question that kind of summarizes it all is, how would you, the panelists, help to bridge the gap? Or what would you do to help the African American community as a whole when it comes to mental and physical health?
Go ahead, Jalen.
Okay, so something that I've experienced, sometimes just being like the only African American that I can see, or just someone that I can't find anybody that is like me at all. It's just a feeling of loneliness and isolation. So something that I, try and do is to make people feel as if they're not alone, because us humans are very sociable creatures, and other people make up our environment. And if there's nobody there, then there's not much we can do. So I would like to be someone's light in making them feel less alone. And I will do that in any way possible that they feel or I could just make people's day like a little bit brighter, So
Anyone else? You have another one, Earl? Oh, okay, go ahead, Javon.
I was going to say that I feel like one of the best things for mental health, like I was saying, giving yourself grace, is another thing is to check up on each other. Really, we are all we have as a community, as people of color. And we understand, like we always say, it takes a village to raise a family. And we need to understand that we need to be here for each other through the good and the bad and the ugly. So it doesn't matter what you're going through, as long as you're like, sometimes you just need a phone call, say how you doing. Maybe sometimes you need to just go out to a park and take a run, clear your mind, something to just know that you're not by yourself, like my brother was saying, because a lot of times in this Black Lives Matter movement, you do feel by yourself. You do feel like the world is against you, no one understands you, and that it's hard to try to be successful in a world that seems like it's against you. So sometimes, even we were talking about white people being allies, if you can just call somebody up, which I've had professors and faculty at Webster do just call me just to say, hey, I was thinking about you. I've been hearing what's going on in the news. I'm just trying to make sure you're okay. That went miles for me, just to know that I wasn't by myself in this, because I came back to school and I was able to, poke my chest out a little bit and just say, wait a minute, I can finish what I've started. I can go ahead and do what I got to do to graduate, because I knew that I wasn't by myself.
I really appreciate that one. And as young adults, as college students, is there one aspect of your experience of this time that either your parents or instructors don't seem to understand?
I don't think they understand the technology part. Now I'm thinking about, when we're talking about technology has gone a long way with social media and this generation being grown up in this social media. I was watching a documentary on Netflix, and they said this generation grew up with social media from middle school on to now. So we grew up, we understand how the ins and outs of likes, comments, how the algorithm, how everything works. So when we talk to each other with this Black Lives Matter movement and how everything is being put together, when I tell my grandparents, hey, the Black Lives Matter movement, somebody was shot, yada, 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 they don't seem to grasp it sometimes. And they would just watch the news, and then they'll see it on the news, and then they'll tell me about it. I'm like, well, that's old news to me. I already got that information 5 minutes ago, or whatever. So technology has really been a tool to kind of bridge the gap between, I would say, the older generation out of this generation. Now, what I want to see done with technology, I would want to see this movement, this type of statement, I want to see it not only be a social media trend, but I want it to be a lifestyle. I want this to go, it's already become global. We've already seen that it's been all around the world. People are saying Black Lives Matter. People are saying that this is wrong. But I want this to be something to where 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we don't got to talk about this anymore. We can move on from this. We can talk about the next thing. We can move on, you know.
Thank you. We're going to take one more question from Earl.
All right. Yes, this is a good round out question. This is from another alumni of Webster, and their experience is they attended an HBCU prior to coming to Webster University. So they want to know, do you think your experience would have been different if you attended an HBCU prior to attending Webster University?
Most definitely. I think at HBCUs, there's like, of course, it's HBCU. There's a sense of community within the Black community.
Let me just do this really quickly. Historically Black colleges and universities. Go ahead.
And the sense of community is, I feel like it will already be there. Going from that and then going to a PWI like Webster, it probably would have been like culture shock or something. Like you have to find your community instead of you being already within your community. It's like, it's almost as if like, I don't know, you're just in a whole new world, honestly.
I agree with that 100%. Our father went to a historically Black college university, HBCU, and we went to a PWI. So when I started going to Webster, he sat me down and said, this was my experience. This is what I saw. You're not going to see that here. And the stories that I was told growing up, he said, you're not going to see it. I'm going to be completely honest with you. And I didn't understand it because I was like, what are you talking about? College is college, you know? But the friends he's had, he was telling me that, like she was saying, the community's already there. It's built for you. When you go to a PWI, predominantly white institution, you got to build that. It's something that you got to fight for. It's something that you got to mold. But once you find it, once it's there, you can go anywhere. Because PWIs really is just a model of what the world really is. If you think about it, PWI, you're seeing the majority of white people and you're the minority, but all this was really just training for me. That's the way I look at Webster. This was nothing but just training. So when I do go out and graduate, I know what to expect. I know how to carry myself when I go to the next level.
Excellent. No pressure, but Jalen or Jacoy, if you like.
I just want to say that I came up in a really, again, like a diverse environment where I was surrounded by a lot of Black people. So coming to a place where it was predominantly white was kind of shocking. So coming from an HBCU to a PWI would be kind of shocking to see a lot of white people and white culture. And it's kind of hard because you don't want to assimilate almost, but at the same time it's extremely alienating. But I really liked what Javon said about having this be a training ground almost, because even if you go to, let's say, corporate level, like executive positions, you're not going to see a whole lot of other African-American individuals. And there is a trend of having more inclusivity in the workplace and at Webster, but it's still in its baby stages. It's baby steps, basically.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also wanted to note that, I would probably have a way different experience if going to a HBCU. And, but since that I have been at Webster for about 2 to 3 years now, and especially being a commuter too, because it's not easy to find, friends. And like just coming from my personal experience, it's been hard trying to find just where I belong. But that gave me a lot of time to look into myself and so I could find meaning for myself, just not to. I mean, if I went to a HBCU, I mean, yeah, I would have had that community and I would have felt, you know, I would have felt really happy instantly, but I probably wouldn't have time to think, uh, just think very profoundly about where I want to go and who I want to be as a person. Because since they all relate to me, you're gonna catch all your friends' habits sooner or later. But since if I would have went to a HBCU, I probably would have thought different things about myself. Webster has taught me a lot of things that I didn't know. I've um for my freshman class, I had a music class for my freshman seminar, and I didn't know a single thing about music, but everybody else did, and that put me out of my comfort zone. And I was already out of my comfort zone. But just thinking about what, just researching what they were talking about, just on my own, I said, "Oh my God, I want to play an instrument too." So, yeah, I remember I remember I was talking to my brother. I said, "How come I've never been taught an instrument?" And then he was like, "I mean, you never brought it up." Because, this is just something that me and my friends or my family just, my immediate family just never talked about. So, as soon as me and my brother just had that little argument, I ran straight to the Thompson house. I said, "Hey, is this where I learned how to play cello?" And she was like, "Hey, I think yes, I believe her name was Jean, but she said like, hey, do you know how to read music?" And I said no. So she was like, "First thing you need to do is to learn how to play piano because you'll read music and learn an instrument at the same time." And it was great. I keep saying this moment to people all the time because it was like a meaningful moment for me, and I just really love sharing it because I've been playing piano for about 2 years now. And I've my piano teacher was Miss Martin, and it was just like beginners. So I every time I would go, every time we had class, I would just bring in like a notebook paper with like a whole bunch of stuff that I found online. I was like, "What's this? What's this? What's this?" And we haven't even talked about it yet. And she understood that this is something I want to do. And I would have never found that if I was in my comfort zone. So I encourage everybody to take a leap. So thank
You
you.
know, I really like that piece, that advice, right? Take a leap, find a comfort zone. This work is not always comfortable. And it's in that discomfort where we actually grow, right? And so I encourage all of us to find that space in which we feel least comfortable or slightly uncomfortable and find our way into that. Because one of the things also, and I think it was you, Tokoy, who just said this in your last comment, right? Like these exposures that we have as people of color helps us. It's another skill that we've learned, and a skill that our white peers and colleagues and friends don't have to learn often, is this idea of living in these multiple worlds, right? It has equipped us with an extra bit of, armor, so to speak. And that is, I think, one of those beautiful things about being young, gifted, and Black, right? Is our ability to do that and to have that skill. I'd like to welcome Dr. Beth Strobel, who is the chancellor at the university and is my partner in the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Webster University.
Well, thank you, Vincent, and thank you, Earl, and all who have participated in our audience tonight. I always start my reflections at the end of every session with a thank you. And it's such a profound and sincere thank you tonight to these young people. Webster Speaks cannot be truly an authentic Webster Speaks without the voices of our own students. And from you students tonight, I have certainly been the beneficiary of listening and learning. And I understand a few things in new and deeper ways than I have before. One of those I want to talk about is this idea of exhaustion. I understand that in your stories and your voices, and I hear the pain of the exhaustion, and I want to add my thanks tonight for any exhaustion that we've caused you tonight in asking you to share with us your experiences. It's generous on your part, and I take it in the spirit of you trying to help all of us hear you better and quit talking and listening more. And we've had that opportunity for the past hour. I truly do understand that. And I understand the living in both of the pandemics and not getting to choose which one you focus on. I understand that in new and different ways as a result of what you've said tonight. Growing up, coming of age, it's never easy for anyone. It has been particularly challenging for you. I hear that. And I want to reflect particularly on the word that Vincent used as he talked about this armor in his closing remarks, and how you have been equipped to lead while you've been at Webster in whatever ways you chose to seek that opportunity. And as you go out into the workplace in your professional lives. That is what an education should do, is to equip us to be the people we want to be people of extreme integrity of our thoughts and our words and our deeds. And what all of us find out, and you have found it out particularly profoundly, is how challenging that is to get real with yourself, to figure out who am I authentically. And it's even harder to stay true to that when there is so much baggage and bias and stereotyping and pushing against your authenticity by considering you other. So it's those experiences that you have and that you have had and that you will continue to have that equip you and strengthen you. At the same time, they're causing you such challenge and such pain. Vincent and I and many others on the Webster campus, and thank you alums for chiming in tonight, want this to be better. You certainly have given us another layer of understanding that I think helps us get better. But Brianna, I particularly Brene, what I want to say to you is, I heard you say tonight, becoming an educator is about wanting things to be better. I came of age in the 60s and 70s, just like our alum said tonight, not in St. Louis, but in a Chicago suburb, and very much wish that things had made more progress now than they had in the 60s and 70s. But it is the reason I became an educator as well. It's why Vincent became an educator. We chose to dedicate ourselves to the cause of equipping the next generation to advance the cause. And we remain committed to that and want life to be better for you and the next generation of students that come after you. So I really just want to close tonight by thanking you for giving us the opportunity to listen, for your courage and bravery and clarity around these tough conversations. I just am grateful and I'm proud. I am proud that you are Webster students, and Jovan, because you are the single graduating senior. I just want to say, I realize again tonight how much I'm going to miss you. So thank you all, and good night.
Thank you, Dr. Strobel. I'm excited to share that, we have 5 Suggs Scholars who have returned. We see 4 of them here tonight. We tomorrow will be announcing in the St. Louis American an additional 10 Suggs Scholars who will be joining us at Webster University. They are Michaela Brock, Jessica Eccles, Juliet Furch, Kalisha Habadala, Deshauna Meredith, Joy Johnson, Naba Yasir, Jalana Muhammad, and Kyrie Player. And we are so excited to be able to increase our Suggs Scholars from what were 2 last year to 10 this incoming year. And Suggs Scholars receive full tuition scholarships. And again, I think it speaks to our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that our next generation of students, particularly students of color, have a wonderful opportunity to change their lives and their families and the lives of members in their community. And so I'm excited to be able to welcome them onto our campus as well. I want to thank our guests. I really do. You all have done such a fantastic job, to the point in which it's been interesting to watch the count of viewers. We have only dropped by 5 or so viewers as we have extended by 30 minutes. So that is fantastic. And so thank you all very much for sharing your stories and for informing and for educating so many people tonight. I really, really, really do appreciate that. And I can't help but to wish nothing but the best for you all as you all continue along this journey. Webster Speaks will be back Wednesday, September 30th, when we will talk about the power of street activists with Alexis Templeton, who co-founded Millennial Activists United in response to the killing of Michael Brown Jr. in Ferguson in 2014. She will be joined by Tori Russell and Alicia Sonier, who also are activists as well. Registration will open for that tomorrow at webster.edu/Webster Speaks. I'd also like to take this time to say that if you are enjoying this virtual series, please check out the Webster World Report podcast, a special program that connects voices across the Webster during this pandemic. The next episode will be released on November 9th. A group of Webster political science professors will unpack the U.S. presidential election. The Webster World Report is available on YouTube, iTunes, and SoundCloud. For more information on that podcast, please visit webster.edu. Once again, thank you for joining us. Be safe, be well, and good night.